Great.
So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to this session organized by us at Elsevier. Meet our incoming female editors for finance journals. I'm Dana Niculescu. I'm the publisher of the finance journals at Elsevier, and I'll also be your host of this half an hour session. And I'm delighted to have here five of our incoming editors and co-editors: Tony Whitehead, who is the current co-editor and incoming editor-in-chief of the Journal of Financial Economics; Christine Hankins, who is the new co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Corporate Finance; Rose Liao, who is the new editor-in-chief of the Emerging Markets Review; Simi Kedia and Tracy Wang as well, who are both have just started as co-editors of the Journal of Corporate Finance. Why are we organizing this event? As you know, there's almost no traveling. There's basically no face-to-face contact, as far as I'm concerned, at least. We thought that this panel would be an opportunity to meet our incoming editors, to ask them questions beyond the information that you can, for instance, look up on the internet. And I would like to use this event mainly for you as participants to ask questions about any topics that are related to, for instance, our editors' experience as female researchers in finance, about their challenges as incoming editors and as authors, as reviewers as well, about any issues of gender in the publishing process, in the academia as well. And please also ask any kind of publishing tips that you'd like to hear about. In order to ask questions, please just unmute yourselves or type your question in the chat. I hope this is very much possible. We'll check all the technical side of it in a moment. I will do my best to monitor the chat, and I will read out any questions that you've written. So just want to start by saying that 2020 was a one-of-a-kind year for all of us due to the pandemic, and the beginning of 2021 finds us all, I guess, working and living in exceptional circumstances. So my first question to get the discussion going, and please, any of the panelists, please feel free to answer, is what kind of challenges are you confronted with in these times?
Do you want me to start? I'll start.
Sure.
So I had an interesting challenge yesterday. Looks like Bill Schwert published all of the referee acceptance rates on SSRN. And this is something that has caused a lot of tumult and a lot of discussion. And I just wanted to say that I have no intention of ever doing something like that. As far as I can tell, it violates EU privacy rules, and I am just not going to ever go down that road.
Yeah, this is also our position. It's a confidential information and should stay confidential. Any other challenges that you have been confronted with in this era? Maybe someone else could add anything.
I think there are the obvious challenges to anyone who is working remotely, trying to stay connected with colleagues, with other researchers, that this has just been a very challenging time. And then when you layer on the gender factor of many women have families and children that are out of school during this period, then that has really complicated it. But it was funny just presenting at the AFAs this week and talking to friends, I realized, I always think that travel is a challenge for a working mother or a working parent in general. And I actually realized by not traveling, it's even harder to stay engaged in the conference because there are so many pulls on my time, and being able to carve out that 3 or 4 days to be very present at a conference is actually wonderful. And this just presented a different layer of the challenges of being in this COVID environment. I don't know if anyone else has similar reactions, but.
Yeah, one good thing that I found that I have been able to participate in conferences where I might not have been able to travel. So that has been positive. I mean, I wouldn't have submitted a paper to the Australian conference because it's kind of hard to go there, but I was able to participate this time. But you don't get it's you don't get the same kind of feedback from the audience because there's no Q&A. So that's the downside. But there is, to me, a little bit of positive that you have been able to participate in more forums than you could before because travel was a reason not to. So
Yeah, I think by this time we all kind of look forward to the next in-person conference
oh yeah.
in the future. I think that the COVID, this sort of the online conferences is the best solution given the current circumstances, right? It keeps the research community going. And but as Semi pointed out, and also Christine pointed out, it also has its own challenges, right? We are, constantly distracted by other things in our, working environment at home. And also, I just think this in-person connection that's actually sort of this, serendipitous, sort of experience that may actually be quite inspiring, that element is completely gone. And it's very hard to sort of create that in an online virtual conference framework. So, but the hope is there, right? So let's hope that actually in year 2021, we will be able to have an in-person conference sometime down the road.
Yes, I feel more sympathetic towards my students because we are professionals. We know what we're doing, and yet attending conferences is not that easy.
No.
My students are undergrads, they are 18 years old, and they have to take classes back to back.
Yeah.
So,
but I think there is kind of a parallel here on this experience of talking about being the role of gender in being an academic. And it's, I think, disproportionately women are less able to travel during their pre-tenure period if they're having children, either because they are at the end of the pregnancy or the beginning of sort of nursing and things like that. And it does remove you from those personal interactions. And I think COVID has given everybody a dose of how important those in-person connections and sort of small discussions are, and how much sort of people, if you're not able to travel due to pregnancy issues, which is obviously a choice, but that can impede your ability to connect and develop new ideas.
Basically, what I hear from you is that networking is crucial, and it's the face-to-face networking that seems to be very, very important, if I understand correctly. And this would be more of a challenge for women because of less opportunities, or less, let's say, opportunities to travel due to family circumstances.
I mean, it's obviously having children is a choice, but it is one that sort of, as far as the physical component, obviously being a working parent weighs on any type of working parent, but there is a physical piece of it that impedes your ability to travel, particularly early in your career generally.
How about this corona times, and of course the challenges that women researchers especially face during lockdowns and so on? Are there any kind of editorial policy that you thought of adopting, to respond to these challenges?
I don't think there are easy answers here. I mean, I'd love to hear what other people on the panel think, or other people in the audience think. But this is something that I think the field has struggled with, as far as just, how do we give clock extensions? How do we deal with sort of disparities in impact without creating a worse situation? And it doesn't seem obvious to me that there are easy solutions. But I'm happy to hear them if they are.
How about, for instance, extending deadlines for authors that would say that they are in difficult circumstances? Would you consider that? Or do you think, no, there should be one policy for all? Just thinking out loud.
To my knowledge, the JFE does not have deadlines for authors, like doing RNRs or so forth and so on. We do have strong deadlines for referees. I have observed that refereeing is a bimodal outcome. Everybody either gets it in early or never gets it in. There is nothing in between.
I see.
So it's interesting that COVID, in my experience, has upped responsiveness, though I might not be the best person to ask about that because I am notorious for driving late referees crazy.
I see.
But I think that as a woman, either authors or referees, if we have the need to ask for extension or anything or help in any way, we should not shine about it, right? And don't feel bad that, oh, I have to ask that this may be, bad for reputation. I think that any woman should just, do what is the best for them in this, special circumstances, right? If you need help, need extension, please just ask. And I think that the whole profession, the editors, would definitely try to accommodate the problem.
So there's a question from Chiara Banti to panelists about how to deal with going to conferences when there's maternity, when you have small children. Oh my goodness. One thing I do know that is happening is that many of the large association conferences certainly the WFA has contracted with childcare to provide childcare at conferences. I think for some of the smaller conferences, that's probably prohibitively expensive, but the large associations, I think, are moving in the correct direction. So the eternal optimist in me is happy about that.
That's a very nice initiative, I think.
I know the AFA has done that. I'm not sure about the cavalcade. I know the WFA has, because I'm the president of the WFA, and we're doing that. So that was one question but I'm not the right person to ask about how to manage it because I have a step kid and I didn't have to stay home because of him.
Yeah. It's a challenge, certainly. I took my parents to more than one conference and my spouse to more than one conference just to play sort of backup, support team. But they didn't have all the childcare options at the time. One thing is that the childcare options often end when all the networking begins, in cocktail hours and dinners and things like that, or at least some of those. I've noticed that for some conferences. I'm out of that age, so I don't pay attention. Maybe they've expanded their offerings, but a lot of the big hotels will also allow you to hire babysitters and other sort of reinforcements.
Yeah, I'm not good too because I actually took a hiatus. I kind of was absent for a bit during those times. So I'm not sure I managed it well. I just took a hit on it. So for the few years.
I would agree that you either do what Christine did, which is bring your spouse, bring your au pair, bring your mom and dad, or you just take a few years off. You always have a balance in your life in some ways, and you can always choose to work on research most of the time before you have children and take a year or two off and then go back to research and teaching when kids are a little older.
Right, and then some universities, including my own university, we are working on policies that maybe give more travel support to especially female faculty that need to bring sort of an extra spouse or parents just to do the childcare during the conference time. So there maybe this is also something to consider for your home institution to at least have some financial support to bring a nanny or an extra person, and actually be sort of be able to have some reimbursement out of the expense.
Related to this, I was thinking these kind of difficulties or challenges that especially younger women have. is this related to the fact that women tend to leave academia, say after their PhD, at a higher rate than men? We have data, of course, showing this across fields, not only in finance, but also in finance. Is there any way that you think women could be encouraged to stay in academia? So, of course, offering some sort of financial support or babysitter at conferences could be one way, so that they can continue to attend conferences. Do you think there's any other way in which they could be persuaded to not leave?
So one thing that I have observed is, and I think this is not a new thought, is that universities have instituted these tenure extension policies that really hurt women because they give it equally to men and women. The idea is that if we lived in a society in which childcare responsibilities were equally distributed across men and women, that would be ideal, but it's not the way the world works. Something I think that we should all encourage our own institutions to do is do what the University of Michigan does. I think it's the best child care tenure clock extension policy that I've seen. You get 1 year, you get 1 semester for giving birth. So no men get that. And then you get 1 semester for being a primary caregiver.
Right. Oh, these are great initiatives.
So I think that that's something I think that, you know, and there's an institution that does it already. So you can point to the University of Michigan and say, look, this is something that would help female faculty. And some men don't get any tenure clock extensions under this when they have children, especially when they have stay-at-home spouses.
Right.
And so I like that. I think that's something that we should all encourage our so that type of policy is, I think, something that we should all encourage our institutions to do, because it sort of gets rid of this extremely this well-meaning but very unfair policy that a lot of universities have instituted.
I absolutely like the idea of giving sort of a relief based on childcare, or childbirth, because this is actually, as you know, Christine already mentioned, that just this physical challenge to women for giving birth, right? So before and after and so on. So this is a great idea.
Actually, I have a question that came to me before this session from a participant. And I'm not sure if they wanted to pose this question now, but I'm going to do it on their behalf if they don't mind. It's about the job market right now, a cold job market, they call it. How can young researchers after their PhD survive in this cold job market? Do you have any kind of advice for them?
I don't know if I have any specific advice except to have a little bit of hope. I think we've seen this after sort of the 2009 recession. A lot of people struggled in what you refer to as a cold job market. And the ones that hung in there, there was a lot of resorting 2 and 3 years later where they got picked up by better schools. And so it kind of seemed like short term, it was inefficient and people might have underplaced, but then there was some resorting and people kind of, it worked out in the long run for many. And that's not to say for all, but it did feel like there was some adjustment and people ended up being able to move if they felt like they weren't at the right institution originally.
So I think one thing I think that will happen is that there's going to be a lot of, I think this will hurt the institutions that are financially worse off much more. My sister teaches at an institution where she has a 4-course per semester load. She's in history, and their university is cutting 18% of tenure track lines. They're eliminating entire departments. And I think that type of thing, and you know, we're so lucky we work for these universities that are relatively financially well off. And I think that we're going to see an implosion of tenure track lines in lots of universities that are under a lot of financial strain. So while you won't see it at the top of the market, I think that this recession I think might be different, because I think that there are permanent changes that are happening. Is maybe not for people at the University of Michigan or at Rutgers or in places like that, but at other places I think it might be quite extreme, which saddens me enormously. And advice, I don't know.
I was out in 2009, and I definitely felt that it was slightly different then from now, because the number of jobs are just too few for the number of candidates we have in the United States. I mean, elsewhere as well, but to a lesser extent. I think at the time when I was on the market, the best advice I got from my advisors was apply anywhere, everywhere, apply to anything. You know, I ended up coming to Rutgers, and it was a great placement for me. But at the time, I really had no idea. You know, the anxiety of being on the job market is real. And whichever year you are going to be on the market, it's going to be there. It's just this year is particularly uncertain. But I think, as Christine said, it could even happen sooner, right? By March or April, things might improve, and suddenly all the schools realize that they need people to teach. Not all schools, but some schools will realize that they still need teachers, and the market might be delayed. So hang in there.
And maybe the home institution and maybe even our profession could also come up with some, more flexible arrangement. I know that some universities have like so-called postdoc positions or visiting positions, right? That would actually give some of the, job market seekers a chance. And at a home institution, some institutions are working on policies to allow students to stay for one more year, and so on. So I think that actually it's a collective effort, right, to sort of help students to deal with this very unusual circumstance. But I also think that I totally agree with Tony that there are long-run trends in our profession that actually got accelerated by the COVID pandemic. And then we all should be, prepared for this. There could be long-term disruption in our industry and job markets. And I don't have solution, but I think that, the starting place that we should all be aware of these long-term trends and disruptions.
Thank you. We have a question from Xiaoxia Su. As an editor, do you expect any improvement in the review process in the near future? I'm not sure to which aspect of the review process they're referring. Perhaps we could have a clarification.
So I guess there are a few things. So there's timeliness. There's perception of reviewer impartiality. I'm not sure what else there is. And reviewer, good reviewer. One thing, there's it's not COVID, that's allergies. One thing that I have advice for the incoming editors is you get to know who the referees are after a while and whether they actually care enough to do a good job or not. So when you start, you send something out to somebody who you know to be thoughtful and smart, and they come back with like one paragraph, pointless nothingness, and it's very frustrating. After you've done it for a while, you know to avoid those people. So I think, and I also think it's good for journals for editors to turn over. So this problem of editors not being completely knowing the quality of the reviewers is going to be there forever. And so I think we'll always see some bad reports. At that point, I think it's important for editors to step in and try to do something that's fair and right and not just rubber stamp everything. And timeliness, I think that's one of the things that the JFE does really well. There are the monetary incentives, and at least I provide annoyance incentives.
How about the possible, let's say, rewards that come to good reviewers, such as the possibility to enter an editorial board? Would this be an incentive, you think, for reviewers to basically do a good job and to and to accept to review?
So I also think this might be, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I get in trouble all the time, so I'm used to it. I think it's useful to have women as editors because our networks include more women. And therefore we pick more women as referees, and then women get more say in the profession. And so I think these and I don't think I'm saying anything controversial. I think sociologists have known for a long time that people of the similar genders like to just hang with each other more. And so my network includes more women than the other editors at the JFE. And so I pick more women as referees. And they've almost always done a great, not always, but almost always done a fantastic job. And so I think that this helps women. If you have, this gives women more say, and it just helps the whole profession become more fair in that dimension.
I see.
Because goodness me, we certainly face plenty of obstacles otherwise.
So if there was a sort of career advice to give to women in the profession, for instance, women that would one day want to become editors of one of the finance journals, what would that be?
Write good referee reports.
Write good referee reports.
Be on time, be thoughtful, do your best, just do your best. The other thing I think that makes referee reports good is when if you as a referee don't know what the heck on earth the author even means by some sentence, say that. I think most of the perception of reviewer low quality comes from utter miscommunication. And so I think that if you as a reviewer have no idea what the author means by something, say that. Say, I think you mean this, and I'm going to respond, I'm going to comment as if I thought you mean that, but if you didn't, maybe you should write it differently. I think that that's also a very useful way for you to be more helpful both to the editor and to the author. So that's advice to everybody. But my observation is that when authors think that reviewers are idiots, it's almost always because of not always, but almost always because of poor communication. In both directions.
So we have 2 minutes left. Is there any other kind of...
I wanted to add, Dana, to your question that I think I found that being part of program committees is also very helpful. You kind of learn how to spot good ideas, and so if you want to sort of develop skills on figuring out how to review papers well, program committees have also, I thought, been very helpful in helping you develop that skill. So if you get an opportunity to be part of program committees, I think it's an excellent way of being involved with where the literature is going and how to pick, and so I found
if I can piggyback on that, I think another way to both be just a good participant and sort of service member of the field, as well as increase your visibility, is when you have the opportunity to do a session chair, whether it's at a regional meeting or a national meeting, is to not pick the most obvious people or the most famous person or the person at the most highest pedigree institution to be the discussants, but pick people that you think are really creative and thoughtful and will give good discussions, and kind of give a signal of the type of people that are doing quality regardless of what their institution is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's-
perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I'm sorry to say that our half an hour has passed. I would like to thank you very much for being here present and taking the time to answer questions. Well, and to wish you a very good rest of the day. Thank you very much. And thank you to the attendees as well for being present and being interested in this topic.
Thanks, Dana. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.